Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternities, a live discussion continuing to count down my top 25 favorite episodes of the entire Star Trek franchise, up to my number 11, which is the third season TNG episode, The Offspring, and I'm joined by very special guest. Very thankful to have you, Phil the Issues Guy. Thanks so much for joining.
Oh, thank you. And I was listening to your intro video for this particular episode. You stole my "keep it separated" joke, so I can't go there right away with the Offspring thing, which really has nothing to do with this episode. But I'm excited to be back. It's been a while, and I'm excited to talk some Star Trek tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, I was trying to think of some other Offspring references. But
I mean, that was their one.
Yeah.
They definitely have. If I thought about it, I could probably think about. I think they had a few like videos and hits that made it, but that's the one that sticks.
Yeah,
sticks
there's a self-esteem song, but there's really no like memorable lines.
Oh yeah, I'm just a sucker with no self-esteem.
Yeah.
And then in the bridge, he says something about Lao. There was something.
Oh,
in there.
Really?
No. Okay. That'd be great though if they were the secret Star Trek Next Generation thing.
Yeah. All right. So let's start with the overall feelings on the episode. Phil, let's start with you. What were just some overall thoughts on the episode overall?
Well, a couple things. Well, the first thing, I didn't even realize my camera was on. The first thing that really kind of got me was it's been a while since I watched earlier season episodes of Star Trek Next Generation. When I say earlier, I mean pre-Best of Both Worlds. So I forget how rough and gruff Picard is in these early seasons. So I love angry Picard, but then we get Admiral Dweebhead coming, which is an issue we'll bring up later about how every admiral that shows up, he ends up being all right in the end, but every admiral that shows up has to be an asshat. I don't know exactly why, but with not Janeway was standing, but even what's his name on Deep Space Nine was doing some shady stuff with Section 31.
Admiral Ross.
Admiral Ross. Yeah, and then he was weirdly sort of like kissing up to Cisco too much, but he was all right. I mean, occasionally we met the one that was God from Star Trek V. He was all right, but he died in the Battle of Wolf 359.
Oh, he was gone. Oh, I forgot that. Yeah, no, he died in 359. Yeah.
So I mean, for the most part, these admirals are morons. But what I forgot is I think Picard has an interesting arc. What I like about this episode is, and this isn't a solo thing. I think I like episodes that are both like this on Next Generation. This is an episode that it's all one story. There's no B story. In fact, there's no Worf story. He's on the intercom and then he shows up at the end like, "Hi, I'm Mr. Worf." He's not even in it. Frakes, this is Frakes' first directorial episode. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more later. Yeah. And I love his one appearance in the episode where he gets to make out with the guest parents.
Well, yeah, Riker, of course.
You could Frakes directed this. Of course, Frakes directed this. But I think right from the go in the episode with the handheld shot in the hallway, I think you start to immediately see Frakes' style of directing, and him and Leonard Nimoy probably have the most as a cast member to do with wonderful Star Trek. I mean, he's directed an episode in every Star Trek series. I don't know if
he hasn't done the animated ones, I know, but he's done all the live actions.
Pretty much, and he's been in all of the original ones. He was in Voyager, he was in Enterprise, even though he sucks in Enterprise, but that's beside the point. It doesn't even make sense for that episode, but whatever.
And Jonathan Frakes is in DS9, but not as William.
No, I mean, let me take my side for a second here to show that. But so yeah, Riker is on there. So that's a fair point. It's Thomas. But overall, I thought this was a really great episode. I love the tone in it because it's really funny, and when it hits you with that emotional thing towards the end of the episode, your body's almost not expecting it. So it really is almost emotionally overwhelming. Even like, I'm going to read the lines later that she says to him at the end. And one other little point, and I'll get into this more too. this is a credit to the actress that played the part. I have her name here somewhere, but actress that plays the part, I'll say it later. And also to Spiner, who, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Nemesis, definitely borrowed some of his performance from things she did in the beginning part of this episode, the way she was talking, some of her vocal cadences. And I'll applaud him for sort of picking up on that. And I'll applaud season 3 of Picard for mentioning this character when older Sung guy talks about the new data android, or the combination. He actually mentions her name. So I appreciate that as well. But overall, I thought this is an episode I would not think to put on my top 25 list. But now that I saw it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is such an amazing episode. And it's an early episode that shows you how great this series can be. Not that there weren't great stuff in season 2. And I know I'm going over my time allowance here, but also I think it's the emotional or the spiritual successor to Measure of a Man. And I'm glad that it does have some references to that. And I also like how Admiral Dickbag is just like I don't care about that stupid episode and everything you did. I found a loophole. Suck it, Picard.
Yeah.
And you forget early on, and they bring that back in Picard season 3, where people are just crappy to Picard. They treat him like shit. But overall, great episode. And I can see why you have it on your list.
Now, I did forget to mention before we went on is that a typical thing, a tradition, I should say, that I do every time I do these live streams is at the end of the live stream, I ask my guests where they would have it on their theoretical top 20, either higher or lower. So I'll save that to the end.
I'll think about that. Do a little deal or no deal at the end here.
Yeah.
See what's in our box.
Yeah. So I do want to give a shout out to Redneck Lover 22, or Bob, for super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat, saying I preferred Lal to have chosen a Klingon male.
Yep.
I was thinking that would be very off, because Law being an android but looking like a Klingon but acting nothing like a Klingon, I think that would have been too weird.
It would have fit into the Next Generation morph, where he was just getting his ass kicked by a constantly. Like everything he could think he could do, like the android would just be ultimately would assimilate all Worf had to offer, and then be a better Klingon than he, and he'd hate it and have to challenge it in combat and then lose.
But the funny thing is, when Troy said, "Oh, a friend for Worf," I'm like, Worf wouldn't be friends.
No. Especially not this Worf. Later on, he warms
up. You are
not
a true Klingon.
There's no honor in this.
Well, so yeah, my thoughts on the episode, I will make a bold statement that I've made before, is that I actually prefer this episode to Measure of a Man. I actually think it's a little better. I like Measure of Man. I think it's a great episode, but I do think it's a little overrated. It wouldn't be on my top 25, mainly because it's in the second season and it has a lot of what I would call second season isms. Like
you can say her name. You can say her name. You want to say it.
I'm not just talking about Pulaski.
You can talk about her.
Although, have you seen the extended cut of Measure of Man that's on the Blu-ray?
No, I'll have to try to seek that out.
Because there's a deleted scene they put back in with Pulaski that actually makes her like cool with Data. I'm like, why'd you cut that scene out? Because otherwise she's always upset with Data.
Sorry to cut you off, but a little aside about her, that I do think that if they hadn't done what they did with Beverly, and I think Pulaski could have been an interesting reoccurring adversary character to show up every once in a while. I think the actress plays the part fine. It's just season 2 has a lot of season 2-ness.
Yes.
Next Generation gets good in season 3. It's just the truth. And,
absolutely.
And I'm kind of with you on that one. And I also heard in your previous video, I watched the beginning of it, I see why it's more universafly accepted to something like Yesterday's Enterprise. The episode right before it is it right before this episode?
Yes, yeah, it's right. It comes right
after. Back to back, like really amazing episodes of Star Trek, right there.
Well, it's actually seen as a common trilogy because it's Yesterday's Enterprise, this, and then Sons of the Father.
Oh yeah,
all back to back. Yeah,
where Kern shows up. I've seen the beginning of that episode a couple of times at watching this one.
Yeah, it's part of why season 3 is my favorite season of TNG. But anyway, so as I was saying, the I do like it better than Measure of Man because I think it does something similar, particularly towards the end with the Admiral. And I guess we'll get more into Admiral later, but I think he's a much more I like realistic character. He seems more well-rounded rather than Maddox, who came off as a bit like mustache twirling,
Totally.
android. And also the whole thing about Riker being forced to be the lawyer in that episode, I thought was kind of silly. So there's just less silliness in this episode for me. And plus, on top of that, we get the great character story of Data becoming a father. And this is one that I think I had this as number 2 when I rated all the episodes for the tear jerking. What are the most tear jerking episodes? I think this is my number 2 because this is one of the biggest tear jerkers out there, in my opinion. So that's also another reason why I love this one so much.
Out of curiosity, what was your number 1?
The Inner Light.
Inner Light. I was gonna say stuff. That damn whistle. I was gonna call it a whistle.
Yeah.
Damn flute. The damn flute. But yeah, the end of this episode. I watched this episode in transparency. I watched this episode twice. I mean, I've seen it before, but I watched it twice leading up. One where I sort of wrote a few things down, and then one watching it on my own. And in both cases, both gosh dang cases, when it got to I feel. What do you feel, Al? I love you, Father. I wish I could feel it with you. I will feel it for both of us. Thank you for my life. Flirting, laughing, painting, family, female, human. I lost it, and I'm crying all the way to the end to when he gets on the bridge, and everyone's like emotional, and he's just like, I made her part of me. And then he sits down, and and this is a big credit to the beginning part of Next Generation, and I think all through, but they get away from this a little bit later on as Data evolves. You're seeing your own emotions through Data. Spiner plays it cold. But I'm like, I see emotion. I'm like, it's Beverly that says in the episode, I don't know about that. He loves her. I feel
it. I gotta tell you, when you were reading those lines, I was practically tearing up from having you read them.
And I read it like a dork. I didn't even read it I can't read it like Spiner, but yeah, absolutely. It's a really, really emotional episode, and I kind of forgot about that and was damning you as I was crying watching it.
Fair enough. Jordan Johnson in the chat is saying this episode wasn't referenced in any other episode very much, was it? I can't recall one off the top of my head. Yeah, I don't think they ever reference it in TNG. No. It was, people talked about it a bit earlier, was referenced in Picard very loosely.
Very, very loosely. It's a passing line.
Yeah. And I was actually disappointed because they said, oh, we're integrating parts of Data lore before and Lal, but we didn't see Data acting like Lal, getting any Lal memories at all. We saw him acting like Lore and before, so I was actually a bit disappointed. And then they never referenced her again after that.
And one minor nitpick that I always have when this stuff comes up, whether it be when Sung's android wife shows up or Nemesis, so we only get a little passing line, but blink if you miss it. Lore conveniently doesn't get mentioned here. When they're like two Sung-like androids in existence, they at this point, do they know Lore's still alive? This is after they reconnected with him in season 1, after Data Lore.
Well, so this is before Brothers. So as far as they know, he's still floating in space.
He's still floating. So they know he's there somewhere. Okay, this is before Brothers.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe they assumed he died because they beamed him into space. But,
poor Lore. He's always underestimated from day one.
But I will say, they definitely, they definitely didn't mention him in Nemesis, but the episode with Data's mom, she did.
Oh, she did. She talks a lot. Yeah, she talks a lot about Lore. And that's an interesting one. And again, I don't want to talk too much about this. We talked a little bit about this in the pre-show discussion, but I would have liked to see her mentioned in Picard season 1. And I don't want to get too down that road of whiny whatever. But when we're getting into Data's ancestors, and it was an opportunity to bring it up organically in the discussion of the season you were telling. So there was moments where I wouldn't have hated some, even in Picard and Data's dream talk, some mentioned, and bite me if they do mention it and I'm just blanking on it, but I don't remember a mention of Lao in any of that. Like this is where we succeeded, where I failed with Lao. Like even a line like that to show some sort of evolution from this episode would have been nice.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they didn't say anything about Lol.
I don't think so.
I was really looking out for it because the storyline's about Data's daughter, and I'm like, reference that he had a daughter.
Yeah, he already had a daughter. Come on. I mean, I get the lore thing with the B4 stuff because the people that made Nemesis never watched Star Trek and they never liked it. So like, I get it to a certain. No, I know John Luke, like, but the director,
right? Yeah, the director.
The director didn't like Star Trek.
Yeah,
and he called Geordi. He called Laverne or something. He called
Laverne. Yeah, Laverne. He thought Geordi was an alien.
Alien, yeah. His name Laverne. He's like, weren't you on Laverne and Shirley? No. But yes. See,
it's a shame with Nemesis. Sorry to go on a tangent, but it's a shame with Nemesis because I was looking up that they wanted Nicholas Meyer to direct, but he turned it down because John Logan had final say in the script, and he refused to do it unless he had final say in the script. And I can imagine how much better the movie would have been if Nicholas Meyer directed.
And I don't want to talk too much about Nemesis or Picard, but I think it is worth mentioning because of the relationship to this story that they created a foundation here that was very good. But this was in the era of television in general where you're almost doing a hard reset. And I think even in season 3, which has some amazing episodes, they don't get to Next Generation never quite gets to late Enterprise Deep Space Nine thing where every episode builds on another episode. And I mean, it does with family from, I think, it gets more like that post All Good Things. Not all post All Good Things, post the Best of Both Worlds.
Yes. So I was I've been going through every episode of TNG. I'm up to season 5, and I have noticed like season 3 was still, even though that's my favorite season, it was still very rigidly episodic. Yeah, not referencing anything. But as soon as we get to season 4, that's when we get all these references. Like they actually go really crazy with season 4. They bring back Lore, they bring back Leah Brahms, they bring back Barclay, they bring back like everyone.
Yep.
Kalar.
And they start really working and building on the can. At that point is when the foundation of Deep Space Nine started, and they were probably figuring out they were expanding the universe at that point. So you need to sort of, and enough time had passed, be like, yeah, Gene's gone. We can have a little bit of disagreement in the crews. We can have the crew have a little bit more conflict. But I agree. I think season 3, in a lot of ways, is one of the most fun seasons of Next Generation because you can tell that the actors are having more fun than they were in the first 2 seasons. And I think it just comes through on screen as well. And if they start getting better too, like the makeup on Lao, and to just get back to the episode specifically, the makeup work on the pre-picked appearance Lao is just one of the best Star Trek makeup jobs. It's just, it looks really cool, really interesting.
Yeah. I was going to say that I think the actors are having a blast in season 3 because they were surprised at how good the show got.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, oh my goodness, and I'm sure they were happy to have Gates back too and have just have the vibe back. Not that, again, I'm not crapping on the actress to play Pulaski, like they liked her, or whatever. But I think there's something about the chemistry that this group of actors has as a friendship group that built over time. You see it a lot when they're on panels together and stuff. They love each other a lot more than you can say about the OG cast.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bob in the chat saying Mark makes going on a tangent an art form. Oh, well, thank you.
That's a compliment.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into the episode. I want to start with the openings part where Data introduced Law to Jordy and Wesley. Wesley being kind of a creep trying to get into the locked door.
Yeah, I thought this was the first Wesley episode I watched, and he was annoying me all the time. And I also want to add to that I forgot about, and they bring it back in Picard season 3. Data's third best friend. If we're like junior high school kids or preschool kids, like, you're my first best friend, you're my second best friend. Jordy's his best friend, Wesley's number 2, and Deanna's actually number 3. Like, he has a pretty damn good relationship with Deanna, and this is a pretty good Troy episode. Which she's fun in this episode, and she's having a lot, to go to what we were saying before, she's having a lot of fun. The actress is having, you can see that she's just like having a ball in this part.
Yeah, as I've been going through TNG, I've noticed like the writing's very hit or miss for Troy. You can kind of tell episode by episode, oh, the writer didn't know what to do with Troy in this episode. Oh, that writer actually did know what to do with Troy in this episode. But
they did, and Frakes directed, and it's another thing to think about when talking about this episode, that this was Frakes' first directing job, and I've never been in the same room as him, but I can just feel like, but as a stage actor, I feel like Jonathan Frakes would be a fun director. Like he'd be making you laugh. He'd be like getting in there with you. And
yeah, that's what everyone who's worked with him says.
Yeah, you can see it. You can see the joy that he has for Star Trek, and it's. And I forgot to add as well, if we're talking about other things that he's directed, he's part of what. And this might be a different conversation altogether, that brought whatever credibility the Orville had came from Frakes directing episodes of that. Really,
I didn't realize he directed episodes.
Yeah, he directed the episode with Charlize Theron on it, and I'm thinking,
right, yeah.
I think he directed a couple of episodes in other seasons too. But he brought and he just having him around and on set, and I know he was, and they asked his opinion about a lot of stuff, brings some credibility to the way they filmed that show, I think.
All right, so Data goes in, introduces Lal to everyone, and then Picard shows up, and he's being the grumpy Tom. He's like, "Oh, Data, why didn't you tell anyone about this?
Come to my room now."
And then when he's talking to Troy in the corridor, he's like, "I wanted to dispel the notion that this is a child. This is not a child." And Troy actually takes the side of Data. She's like, "Well, why can't we think of it as a child?" So it's interesting. I've heard different opinions on this. I heard some people take Picard's side, saying, yeah, this is just essentially an android. It's just like a robot. So why are they acting like a child? So Picard's right to be upset that Data created like a whole new sentient being and is being very flippant about it and is acting like, well, it's just like giving birth, but it's actually totally different. But on the other hand, a lot of people, and I think I'm more on this side, of take Data's side, where, it's different for you, but it's pretty much the same sort of thing that humans do. Now, I think maybe Data should have told Picard ahead of time, but
Captain, I don't see any other crew members that that have to ask before they go to booty time. If I want to do it, I have a slightly different take on it. That I think that Picard was, and I didn't think about this until watching the episode all the way through, because when I first was watching it, I was like, oh, Picard, I was more in line on Data's side, and thinking that Picard was being like grumpy. I hate children, I hate children, Picard, but in retrospect, looking back on the episode, I think it's just he has weird spider sense for Admiral Asshole, or thinking that this is going to be a problem on how Starfleet is going to do this. And he can Professor X his way to predict the future of this, on how this is going to go. And I think he just gets the bad mojo on this is going to turn bad. And he's almost in a weird way wanting to protect Data in this. And I think so he's being the asshole to, because even at the end, when later in the episode, a few minutes, we'll probably talk about it, Data's like, oh, I love how nonchalant Data is. This is one of my favorite exchanges in any episode of Star Trek, where Data's just like, well, I'll deactivate the device. And Picard's like, what do you mean, Data? Child! Like he freaks out, because I think Data doesn't comprehend how Starfleet is going to take ownership of this entire thing. He just Data's calculated that I won that other case. I'm a sentient being, and I'm good to go. And Picard is like, nah, Starfleet is gonna bleep you in the bleep.
Yeah. So that scene, by the way, is it's not the classic Picard face palm, but it's his like second most one, the double face palm. When he goes like that when he's talking to Data, you see memes of everywhere.
It's some top level wordy comedy where Picard's saying stuff and Data's being quite literal in the response, and it's just hilarious. It's old school vaudeville comedy, and
Yeah.
it's hilarious as Picard's just playing the straight man getting crazed upset at Abbott's like blubbity blubbity, you know. Well, I don't know, third base. What the hell? No.
But I think you make a very good point about Picard knowing how Starfleet would react, because he's a captain, so he deals more with the Starfleet brass than Data is. So Data might not be aware, not really thinking about, yes, that Starfleet's not going to just say this is just another procreation.
Yeah,
They're going to flip their lid about it, which I think Data should have known better after the experience with Measure of a Man. But
yeah, me too. And the innocuousness of all of this is a little odd to me too. So he bought and they skip over this. They yada yada this. So I want to unpack it because we passed over it a little bit, and I don't want to quite yada yada it. So Data bought an Android pack at a conference or something, and then he was able to like create a positronic matrix out of it or something like that. Is that ultimately how did he get the device essentially?
Oh. Yeah, I don't remember that.
There's like a passing line in the episode.
Yeah, I just hear technobabble.
Right, yeah, he technobabbles like I was at a robotics conference and I grabbed a device that had a base blah 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 blah, and I technobabbled it with and added a positronic matrix and downloaded my consciousness, and this is my daughter. There's a little bit and it's that scene with so early start. Next Generation in general and Voyager specifically, those two series lean on the technobabble, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah,
I'm okay with it. It works in this episode. It's worth mentioning that there is an explanation for it, and it's quick. He says it to Wesley. He's in a "shut up, Wesley" moment where Wesley's like, "What'd you do?" He's like, "Shut up, Wesley. This is what I did." And But anyways, I'm sorry. Let's get back to where we were. But I did want to mention.
You're good. Yeah, you can bring up any points because I'm sort of just been hitting the broad things here. So I was actually just gonna jump to the scene where Law chooses her own gender and appearance, which I thought was a very bold scene for the early '90s, and it was interesting getting. We already talked about the Klingon thing. Like, I actually don't think that was a good choice.
No. I mean, even if you've watched Enterprise, and Andorian's an odd choice too.
No, or the Andorian, yeah. Because if you notice, like, the Andorian looked very different than the Enterprise ones. It was like green. And,
totally. Yeah, like really, definitely way different. Way different.
I think that's the only time we've seen Andorian on screen in Next Gen.
And in fairness to that, I mean, don't they have a Trill on Next Generation? They redesigned.
Oh yeah, that was definitely a much worse situation. But yeah, it was interesting. And one thing is like a slight little nitpick I have about this scene, not a big deal, but Troy is in the holodeck sleeping on the floor. She's in the holodeck. She could just make it like a couch or a chair or something to sleep.
That's a good point. No one should ever sleep on the floor. It's like no one puts baby in the car. No one should ever sleep on the floor of the holodeck.
Yeah. But that's just a minor thing. But yeah, no, it was interesting that why is Data said she was going through like 1,000 choices, and so why didn't he just call Troy when in
the last minute? And honestly, with all the calculations, he probably could have said 10,000 choices, at that point. But,
yeah.
Like with what I can do in a video game to design a me on my Wii, there should be more than 1,000 choices.
Yeah, and it was also very interesting, again, like you said with Troy, that she was used well in this episode. I like how he's consulting her on, giving her to help him in sort of raising a child or making very important decisions for law. So I think that was a really nice.
And I mean, it is ultimately for that payoff at the end of the episode, which is really great. And again, another great Troy moment where Troy, I feel. Like they probably had, so she needed to be involved in the episode and involved in the situation. But I thought she gets a hard time sometimes with well-deserved. That, to your point earlier, some people don't know how to write for her. I don't think it's ever really because of her performance until we get later on.
Oh no, I think Marina Sirtis gets a lot more shit than she deserves. I think she's a good actress. It's just she was usually given bad material.
Right. And badly staged right there on the strip with Ricardo, right? Like she shouldn't have gotten the third spot, you know. That's a little it's what, like the counselors on the bridge. I mean, there was I mean, I guess but whatever. I was like, is Esri rocking the bridge too? But yeah, she has Judzia's memories, so she's up there playing dual science officer. They're down to a skeleton crew at that point. Yeah. But I think Troy was really effective in that scene. She's funny in the scene, waking up and like falling asleep and getting up there. Her reaction to all of the. Her reaction to the looks, though, are interesting. You mentioned this earlier. A friend for Worf, and Android seems to be the only one. Oh, you're a human male. You're kind of hot. I would totally eat ice cream with you. And I like her with the You know, so it was just an interesting kind of just funny. It was just well written humor.
But it seems like Law pretty much made up her mind anyway. She's like immediately like, no, I have chosen. It's like, okay,
because they gave it in a way. They gave it away in the scene before when she turns to Troy and says, "Troy, I want to be what you are." Like the scene. The scene was played in a weird way. I think it was maybe scripted slightly different to say, "I want to look exactly like you." She doesn't say exactly. It seems like she's saying in that moment, "I want to be what Troy is." So I think there was some sort of like they gave it away. They gave it away in the earlier scene of what her choice was going to be. So I remember even the first time I watched the episode, oh, she's going to choose the human female.
Let's see. So all right, this is a question I want to ask. Do you think the actress who plays Lol is a good actor and does a good job portraying an android? Because I've heard different opinions on this. I heard some people thought she was terrible. I personally think she's amazing. I think she does a really good job. She doesn't copy Brent Spiner, and I think that's what makes it a good performance, is that instead of imitating Brent, she brings her own sort of flavor to it. And I think she's able to capture the essence of portraying an android, but at the same time giving it character and emotion, which I think is a hard thing to do.
And I would also say that, and the actress's name is Haley Todd. And I think she does an excellent job too. And I think she has a very difficult part to play in this moment. Anytime we see androids in these moments, they're usually played by Brent Spiner at this point. So she has to come in and play a different kind of character, and also play it from more of an infancy kind of starting position. We haven't seen Data at this point. We didn't see Data in his beta form, where his B4 form, and being simplistic and sort of developing on that. So I think she does an excellent job, and it's not easy to play almost slapstick comedy at times. Riker Frakes directs this slapstick at times, like in the bar in the 10 forward scene with himself getting bowled over. Some of the even Whoopi. This is a great Whoopi episode. This might be my favorite Guinan episode. Well, I'm sure we'll get to Guinan a little bit later, but but I think she's excellent. She's the most Whoopi in this episode when she sasses the. I'm sure you spent some time in a bar, Admiral. It's freaking hilarious. And Picard's like, she's on my ship. She'll get away with anything she wants. You will deal with it. She will sass you, and you will deal with it. But I think the actress that plays Lau Haley, she has a hard thing to do because she needs to play so many comedic scenes, so many scenes that make you laugh, that make you almost goofy scenes in a sense. But then she mixes it in. It starts with the scene coming out of the school. Like, in the only time she almost comes off like Spiner, and it's a good way, when she's like, She almost comes off more like Spock than Spiner, and she's like, somehow without understanding comedy, I have mastered it.
Yeah.
It was a very Vulcan kind of moment, but
Yeah.
but right in that moment, I don't want to be different. There's almost this shift to the tone of the episode, and she starts playing it deeper, and also she plays the emotion thing, developing emotions, a shit ton better than Spiner did in Generations.
Yeah, you know what? That's true. I
Like,
definitely agree with that. But but the caveat I would give to that is I think Spiner actually did a good job playing emotions in Picard season 3.
I think he did an amazing job, and I think he did a great job doing lore with emotions and being that hybrid of the situation. I think so. I just don't. I think the script abandoned him in Generations, and they amped up his camp. They told him to I don't blame Spiner in that, but I'm saying the development of the emotion, I enjoy it more. When she plays those moments, I feel them. But I agree, he kills it, and they all kill it. From an acting standpoint, they all kind of kill it. And I even like Raffi in that damn season.
Oh, really? Yeah. No, she was good. She was a good duo with Worf.
Yeah, no, it makes her passable. Like I really want that series. Well, the Star Trek Legacy, whatever, with the captain with 7 of 9, and I think and again, this isn't a Picard season 3 cast, and I haven't listened to your reviews and stuff. I don't hate Jack as much as many people do. I think as long as the stories aren't always focused on him, I think he's an interesting character, and I think he has good chemistry with Jerry Ryan and with Geordi's daughter there. I think they have a good back and forth. Like I actually feel their chemistry on screen, and I would totally buy a series with them being the main cast members. And what's the original cast, the original captain of Shaw. Yeah, I loved him. Good one season character.
I think they stated that if they do another series, they're bringing Shaw back from the dead.
They know it. They got lightning in a bottle with that dude, and he plays a great star.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they recycled the emissary storyline with him in the sense to have him. But I like how they evolved it with Picard in that moment where he's just like, I heard it before from a hell of a lot more dangerous looking person than you.
Yeah. I think I heard, I don't know if this is reliable, but I heard recently Terry Matalas saying that they still no plans to make the show, and it's looking doubtful that they ever will.
Well, as long as that guy, Terry, is controlling things or making Star Trek series, I'm optimistic. I know there is a unfortunate announcement about Lower Decks, and people are sort of, which seems premature considering the success of the series and how much people are enjoying it. And I think Strange New World is still going, and I've caught up with it. It's a great show. I think Star Trek's in a good place right now, and I'm hoping what happens with the Lower Decks thing is that some sort of animated anthology series comes out, and that we catch up to those Lower Decks characters, but then we get more full episodes. Like I really enjoyed the Deep Space Nine episode. I would like to see more adventures of animated Kira and Quark. I wouldn't mind seeing a whole 15-minute episode couple times. 10 episodes come out and have like a couple of episodes be Voyager cast episodes, be Janeway episodes. And anyways, we're way off topic. Sorry.
So I did want to address J. Cayman 99 in the chat, saying it is interesting that in Measure of Man he was willing to retire, but in this episode he was willing to give his daughter to the state. That's my only nitpick.
Yeah. He said eventually. He said I will let her go once I'm done training her, essentially.
Well, what happened was the admiral said, "Bring her to my ship," and he was like ready to do it. He got up and he was about to do it, but Picard stopped him. So I think that's what he's referring to.
It's because Data is programmed to, or not programmed. His morality clause, his morality thing that often gets talked about, is sort of reflected to respect the chain of command. So when an admiral tells you to do something, you do it, unless you're direct. It's almost him just following orders. But it is interesting to the I was to say the callers, to the chat person, to J Cam's point that Data did threaten to quit in Measure of a Man. He didn't do that here. He didn't say, "Well, I'll quit and I'll take her with me."
Yeah, because it seems like even if he did quit, they would still try to take her.
Yeah, it almost like that was understated in the
Yeah,
moment. Like we're not giving up on another android that can make our ship near unstoppable.
yeah,
Like they were just salivating at. I mean, we'll talk about this more at the end of the episode, but a question that I have for, I mean, you can answer it now too.
sure.
Does Admiral Dweebhead redeem himself by the end of this episode in a better way than Maddox does in Measure of a Man? And I think he does, but it's just because I like this actor and his performance really sells that scene at the end when he comes out. His hands were moving, but like
Yeah.
this guy is an ass. This guy is
Well,
a
I
real
want to talk about him a bit more later
Okay,
on,
we'll hold off to talk.
but I will say that yeah, I like the way he was handled better than Maddox for sure.
Me too. Me too. I think it feels more organic, but this dude's still an ass.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we get a montage of
Yep.
Data being a good dad to Lol, like teaching her what a painting is and having her drink and mess up, but then later she learns how to drink, so it's showing that she's progressing. And we see Data go to Crusher to get advice on Data. This is the scene you're referring to earlier, where where she tells Data to be there for her and to give her love and affection. He's like, "Well, I can give her attention, but I can't give her love." And then Data walks away, and then Crusher says, "Why do I find that so hard to believe?" And I love that. I love
It's
these
great.
portrayals of Data as more than just a non-feeling robot. I think that's when I talked about how some people didn't know to write for Troy. Some people didn't know to write for Data. I just watched that episode in theory when Data had a girlfriend. I thought the writers there like completely bungled his character. Where here, that's the kind of Data that I like. The one who's like an android who doesn't have emotions, but he still has like human attributes
Yep.
in the very subtle ways. And I think that is the best kind of Data. And I think the whole montage of him showing her like how to do things was very well needed and is what really like builds up this character. So why by the time you get to the end, why it is so tear-jerking, why it is so tragic.
Yeah, it is a great her playing the baby in those moments, and just it's a little ahead of us, but there's also a scene in that moment where Wesley has to run off to get his haircut, and I also like in that scene with and I will say the same thing about Gates. She talks about this a lot about how she had to just create her own character and often struggles for people to know how to write for her. But I thought she was excellent in that scene, and I thought what also is really great is we see the delusionalness of motherhood in that moment where she says all the kids didn't hang out with Wesley because they were intimidated by him. Sure, they were. Yeah, Wesley's so damn likable. Wesley's like the most likable person in the world.
Well, I'm sure they were intimidated by him because he was a super genius that
Right, yeah,
saves
he's
the
a super,
Enterprise every week.
he's a super genius, of course, of course. And so Wesley is the super genius. Oh my goodness. Okay, but I thought, I think that's a multi-layered, interesting scene that definitely just makes both those characters better, both Data and it's important that Beverly gets these moments in season 3 as again thinking about it in retrospect, she's back now, so
Yeah.
every moment you get with her is like, oh, here she is. And again, someone said earlier their favorite character is Pulaski. I don't dislike the character either. I think she's a fun punching bag because I think the actress is like, oh, I'm okay with it. It's almost like she understands it and she has a sort of sense of humor about the whole thing. But she's excellent playing that character. If that was someone's favorite character, she pulls off exactly what she wanted to do. They wanted to bring that cantankerous Dr. McCoy thing in there, and they did. It just wasn't, it was a problem with getting rid of Gates, not adding her. I think,
Yeah.
and she would have been good. I would have liked to see her and Gates in a scene together, arguing. That they would have been an interesting clashing kind of moment. Maybe she's in charge of Starfleet Medical and she comes on an episode and wants to do something, put Beverly on trial. I think she'd be awesome in an episode like that or something.
Yeah, I had nothing against the actor who played Pulaski, but I didn't like the character. I'm one of those people who hated her. And I think nothing against the actress, but I think that they did try to make her like too McCoy like, and I think that didn't really jive. And I think just the combination of her and Grumpy Picard just came off as just too
it was too grumpy.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
goes to your season 2 cloud of grumpiness.
And also, like, the way she treated Data, again, that was a bad way to introduce
Data.
her character.
It's Data.
Yeah.
Data.
And but as I said, like, towards the end of the season, I could see the writers trying to correct her character and make her nice to Data, and actually make her not so cantankerous. So
beat him, Data, like that scene where with the dude in the 3D chess game. Beat him, Data.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that was like, so maybe she could have been better had she sticked around. But I'm happy to have kids.
No, me too, 100%.
But
I just think the actress does all she can. They should have probably just killed her in that episode where she got old, where she made, where they like sacrifice. I think most people were watching that episode rooting for in the moment. At the time, I remember my cousin Scotty was watching that episode, and he was my introduction to Star Trek. And he was watching it at my house, like, die, kill her.
So yeah, in the chat, Allison says, "One is my name, the other is not."
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, one thing I was thinking about though when I was watching that scene with Crusher is something that Gates McFadden said. I heard an interview with her recently saying that she felt like when she returned to the show in season 3 that they were writing her character as Pulaski still. That it didn't seem like the Crusher that she was before she left. But I think in this scene in particular, like, I think that is full on Crusher, because I couldn't imagine Pulaski acting like that.
She's so warm in that scene. Yeah, she's 100%. She has such warmth in that scene. And I don't know if we are going to talk about this necessarily, but I do want to bring up is it Troy? No, it's Wesley in the scene right before he gets called off to the barber, where he asks what she's doing and every day when he's at work. And he suggests, which is a stupid suggestion, send this Andrew, send her to school. No, like, I think it's, the 10 forward idea makes far more sense, but instead of forcing children to interact with this android, but anyways, so he sends her to school, or we have a funny scene where she starts asking too many questions as her brain starts extensions, and he does what every parent in their life and switches her off and says, it's time to go to bed, Lau. You're going to school in the morning. It's just it was a funny scene. I think they did the whole school thing just for the humor of it, because it created the funny scene with him and the teacher where she passed all her tests. Excellent. Well, it was just kind of a funny sort of parent.
Yeah, it's funny. I just watched the episode Newground when Alexander came on the Enterprise, and the teacher there that was dealing with Alexander, I think this teacher's much better.
Much better. Much better. I mean, the best teacher, we got Keiko O'Brien. Was she?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Best Star Trek teacher, because most of them are pretty inept. She battled.
Kai Wynn. Vedic Wynn at the time.
Wynn at that point. Was an underrated Star Trek villain right there.
Yeah. But I actually think that I think that bringing her to the school kind of makes sense, because to sort of socialize her with the other children, but of course didn't work out. And it kind of makes sense that it didn't. And that scene, I find it kind of tragic, the scene in the Turbolift where she was, saying, I have somehow mastered humor. And Data's like, well, there's a difference. They weren't laughing with you. They were laughing at you.
I love the coldness of androids in that moment where it just like cuts her. We're in the moment. You're like, oh, okay. They don't care.
But the scene where with her response of just saying, I do not want to be different. Like, that is so like relatable as a kid.
And that changes the game in that moment too.
Yeah.
And really, as we were talking earlier, it kind of shifts things where you're like, oh, this is going to go emotional, isn't it? And the actor that plays Admiral Dweebhead, who I think comes in a second here, Nicholas Coaster is his name.
Yes.
He's been in a lot of stuff. He's been in a lot of stuff. I'm not going to name his filmography, but he's been in just more stuff than you could imagine. He's had he's a well-seasoned actor, and he plays it up. And they always do this with the admirals, bring people that can sort of match Picard and Picard's speech. Yeah. And Picard brings out Picard speeches out of every pocket in this episode. He's got Picard speech coming up at the end. But this is this episode starts getting more serious from this point on. The comedy starts
Well,
shifting.
they have a few scenes with him like calling Picard on FaceTime, whatever, before he shows up, and he's starting to be a dick. But you realize that when he shows up, he's just going to full on be a dick.
He goes there. I'm telling. There's I don't know the exact moment, but they're going back and forth, and Picard's like, "Well, I've one upped you in weird protocols, so you cannot take the android." Haha. And he goes, "Well, I'm telling," and clicks off, and we'll see about that. and he goes whines to somebody and gets what he wants. He pulls rank on Picard, and it's kind of funny if you think about it. That this little whiny dude, probably, you think this guy was Maddox's boss? He don't say it, but like he works at, or sort of hired him to run the Daystrom Institute. Is that what it's called? I believe.
Yeah.
I don't know if this guy hired and they didn't connect this directly to Measure Man, but I wouldn't doubt it if this was if this is like a payback sort of thing. Like, oh, I finally have that he embarrassed my protege in court.
Well, I actually want to talk about him now anyway. He's I've heard some people say that he comes off as a mustache twirly villain, and I actually disagree with that a lot. I think and this kind of ties into his sort of redeeming himself at the end, because I think he's more of a believable character rather than just a flat out villain. I think the one caveat is that of his refusal to take Data with him, I think, is a bit just for plot convenience, but that's fine. Like, it works for the plot.
He wants to use this as it's some of the stuff that doesn't have to be said, but you can see within him that he sees this as an opportunity, to use a Ferengi word, to further his career, to make his star shine higher. So he doesn't want Data to take any of the credit, I think, is part of it too.
Wow, that's interesting. I never thought of that angle.
I think he's seeing this as his way of taking complete ownership of being the person that brings another Sung-like android to every ship in Starfleet. Like, he doesn't say these things, but I see this in his performance. And to your point, that's why it's believable, because I think you can start seeing where this guy is figuring this out and thinking that. But I agree with you. If you can have Data there to help you, Data doesn't care about credit. He let you take all the credit.
So I think that he's being honest when he says he does want what's best for Lal.
Yep.
But he's looking at it more from sort of a Starfleet admiral's perspective. What's good for the Federation? What's good for Starfleet? Not where Data's looking at it for a father to a daughter. And I think he can really see the difference.
And I would say where he gets, and this isn't mustache twirly, he gets convincing, stubborn asshole, that he has all these concerns, and Data answers every single one of the concerns.
Yeah.
And the guy doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And he almost won't even. And one of my favorite moments, we'll talk about, like, this. He calls Lal into his office to sit down, and he's just like talking around her, and I love, "You're sassing me. I don't think your father's taught you respect." Well, you're not showing that father damn respect. I'd argue that she's starting to feel emotions right there, because she is really sort of her cascade failure is unfortunately starting in that moment right there, as she's starting to process this and kind of have I'm sorry to have like crazy mind right here, but I never thought about it in this way. But an episode that I might put on my Star Trek list of emotional episodes too, I believe it's called Broken Link. Not Broken Link. What's the episode that Odo finds that he gets his powers back? It's very parallel.
Yeah, Broken Link was the one he lost
his powers.
The one he got it back. Oh God, what's it called? It's the Begotten.
There's a similar. I think this episode does it better. And I'm a Deep Space Nine first fan, but that episode creates similar emotions with the connection, especially at the end scene with Odo holding like I wanted to show you so much. I wanted to feel so much. I think it's some of Renee's best light acting on the show in the series. And this episode makes me, as someone that religiously watches Deep Space Nine and watches Next Generation and Voyager as well all the time, but I'm sort of like in Deep Space Nine loop right now. you can feel the influence that episode got from this one, and it almost seems in some ways for different reasons way influenced, especially with the ultimate conclusion of the episode.
Yeah, and I was going to say about the Admiral is one of my favorite lines, Picard lines, is when he says, "Admiral, I thought you came here to form an opinion, not to justify
Dude,
one."
I was just going to say that. And he comes in there with such like an already made decision, and that's not very Starfleet. To go to your the point about him coming in with the Starfleet should be at least how we've been told in that moment. And I love Picard just looking for the in and all that stuff. And that scene with Lau when they're all sitting there, and he just connects. Well, what do you want? You're a sentient being with a right. Like, oh, tell me what you want, and I'm going to Picard speech you right here. And we get into that in a little bit later, but yeah, I thought that was really awesome. I don't know if we've already, because we've already got past this. And before we get back to Admiral Dweebhead and continue here, one last comedic moment that I want to talk about in this episode that's great. When post the school thing, when all that's not working out, Data decides to bring her to 10 forward. And
it's just about to get into
okay, I'll shut up then.
Yeah, that's all good. Well, one last thing I wanted to say about the Admiral was the scene with him and Picard in the ready room. And, he's talking about, we're taking her away. And Picard's like, no, the Admiral says, are we talking about separating a mother and daughter, or father and daughter? Isn't that sentimental for androids? And then Picard gets kind of like up in his face. It's like, these are sentient androids. Their place in society is well defined. I helped define them, which I thought was great. And that was
a really great moment. And that dude, again, how he does it, he almost out protocols Picard, and he maneuvers his stance, keep changing the target. It's a dickhead move of a way of arguing and getting in the way. And he shifts it to, now the reason why I need to do this is 2 Sung type androids can't be on a starship. One stray blast from a Romulan and you guys are both dead. And Picard's like, oh, your Pokemon, your rock Pokemon has beat my fire Pokemon. It's a total moment like that. I don't know if Rock beats, but some Pokemon actually, Phil. And Onyx is very good against the Charizard. Sorry.
But the one thing I wanted to bring up quick is the writing in this episode, because this was the first episode written by, I can never pronounce his name correctly, I think it's Rene Echevarria, who went on to become a prominent writer in TNG and DS9. Mm-hmm. And this was a spec script that he was working at a cafe, and he just sent it in, and they accepted it and flew him out to Hollywood to work on it. But apparently his original script was very different. It was a lot more of a comedy, and it had like Data creating a daughter with the Enterprise computer and arguing with the computer over it. And I'm glad they changed it, because
probably a little more Data's Day kind of vibe to it.
And so what happened is they got Belinda Snodgrass, who wrote Measure of a Man, to come rewrite this episode. And apparently she rewrote it heavily and was still gracious enough to give him the writing credit. But the point is, the whole storyline with the Admiral, she wrote, and that's why it probably comes off as very similar to Measure of Man.
And that's where I'll take my bullcrap headcanon that this guy is totally their path for revenge from Maddox.
It could be.
Or he's pissed off because he's the guy who initially gave the order to want to bring Data in, and he's, I don't know, I'm making that.
The one thing I would have against that is that I personally think the Admiral actually means well.
Me too. Honestly, I'm with you too. I think some of that's why his end in this episode, it isn't like, again, Measure of a Man's a great episode. And I think part of the reason why Measure of a Man, because I agree with you, I think overall this is a better episode. Measure of a Man gets more fanfare because it is
good Picard speeches.
It is great Picard speeches. And people like the idea of Riker and Picard going up against each other in different ways, as they play with later in a big way. But I will also argue, and I have to really think about this, like have the episodes all in front of me. This isn't to say that there aren't good episodes in season 1 and other good episodes in season 2, but I would argue that Measure of the Man is the first great episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Oh, totally agree. go as far to say that it is the only great episode of the first two seasons.
And I think that's true. The only reason I'm stopping myself is because I don't have the list in front of me, so I might be missing one in my own mind. But I totally think that it's the Eddie Murphy joke of like you're starving in the desert and someone hands you a cracker. It's going to be the best cracker you ever tasted in your life. You're like, that thing's a Ritz. Oh my God, that's a Ritz.
Exactly. That's a very good
and I think Measure of a Man gets a little bit of that because it's the first time people were watching it and being like, oh, wow, this show can be awesome. And what's the other one? The Encounter of Farpoint's probably the other, like, or one of the Q episodes, maybe, or something like that would probably be another.
Yeah, a lot of people like Q-Who, but I'm not one of them.
Is there a Moriarty episode mixed in there, maybe?
Oh yeah, the first one, the Elementary Dude.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Elementary Dude is a pretty good episode. But whatever, it's not great in the way that Measure of Man is, and I think seasons 3 through 6, 7 through most of 7 are, you could all say that are 60% of the episodes are excellent. Yeah. You know, at that, maybe more too. I was under numbering it because I didn't want to overdo it. Do it there.
Yeah, fair enough.
There's a high batting average for amazing episodes from seasons 3 through 7.
Oh yeah, absolutely, totally. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the 10 forward scenes. I wanted to get more because we already talked about Jonathan Frakes directing the episode, but I think this was his first.
This started it all. Yeah, this one.
Yeah, and so I think, like, usually I hear about like the directors are given episodes at random. It's like pulled out of a hat or something. But I have a feeling that wasn't the case here. That they purposely did Jonathan Frakes for this episode because Riker's barely in it.
Right.
They purposely. That's why. Riker's off the ship.
I'm going to look this up, and I know he also did Far Beyond the Stars, which he's a big part of the episode. But I feel like one of Avery Brooks's early episodes that he directed on Deep Space Nine was like was Little Green Men or the Fabulous like one of the Ferengi episodes.
Oh, really? I don't remember.
I'm looking this up right now on the side because I don't want to talk out my ass too much. Yeah. I feel like it was the episode that it was the one where they're going home and the ship breaks. No, it's Little Green Men. I believe he directed Little Green Men, but I could be wrong about that.
Or was it Family Business, the one with Quark's mother?
It was one of the Ferengi ones where Sisko's barely in it. So I do think there's something to that where we only see Riker in that one moment. And if I'm completely wrong about this, I'm sorry, Avery Brooks. I know you directed Far Beyond the Stars. I'm right about that, but I'm gonna look this up and see.
Well, I have a controversial opinion about Avery Brooks. I think he's a better director than he is an actor. That's just
we can talk about that at a later date.
Well, I think we had a discussion on In the Pale Moonlight before, and everyone hated my opinion because I think Avery Brooks is a bit of an overactor, but he's a great director. He's a
great theatrical actor, and sometimes that translates on screen. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it can seem hammy and over the top. I think for the most part, it works on Deep Space Nine from seasons. Once he gets the beard and on, I think some early stuff is shaky.
Well, for me, the times it really works is when he's playing a demented character, like his Mirror Universe, or that Bond episode where he played the Bond villain. Like, he was so good as a Bond villain. But I know that he directed Rejoined, but I don't think it was the first episode he directed. That was mainly a Jadzia Dax episode, and I know he did a really good job.
He directed 9 episodes.
Okay.
I'm gonna try. I'll try to find the episodes just because I'm friggin' whatever. But we can go on. I'll look at as well.
So we talked about the scene where Riker goes to 10 forward and Lal just kisses him. I think that was definitely just done for comedy. I don't think that Lal would really, just after seeing two people kiss, would grab. And it's always, of course, Riker, but it works. It works
it works too because of the setup scene with Whoopi and Lal, where she's that man is eating her. What is he doing to her? Where Whoopi is teaching her how to be a creep, teaching her how to be a peeping Tom. He's like, this is what you do. Let's watch this couple make out at the table over there. And then they get up and leave. Where are they doing? Oh, you'll have to ask your father. It's just a funny moment. And then Riker comes in, the comedy, and then the funny line afterwards of Spiner plays the line you expect him to say, but it's still hilarious. Where
Oh yeah.
what are your intentions, Mr. Right? Or Commander, what are your intentions with my daughter? It was a great kind of line
Yeah.
to read.
What? And Riker's response, "Your daughter," and just looks at
And he
him.
leaves. I'm out of this episode again. And then he just walks out and he's no longer part of the episode. The person that I expected to be more a part of the episode when the episode starts, and this again there's nothing wrong with this. It's just they set it up at the beginning like Deanna, Wesley, and Geordi are all going to have sort of a big scene with everyone. Wesley gets it. Deanna's a huge part. I can't remember another Geordi moment that we have. Maybe it was a scene that was cut for time or something, that we have a scene with Lal, Geordi, and Data similar to the Wesley one, or similar to one of the Troy ones. Is there a Geordi one I'm not thinking
So
of?
the only other Geordi scene I can think of was at the very end when after Lal died, and
Right, where they're all sort of giving him the
in
Brady Bunch
hallway.
emotional hug moment. But yeah, it seems like, and this is not a nitpick of the episode, it's more of a nitpick of my own, like, having watched the episode twice in like 48 hours or something, of thinking that when you see the start of this episode and they set up the episode with the three of those characters walking and talking and being a part of the emotional thing with Lal, Troy gets a big payoff for that. Even Wesley gets that one scene where he's sort of the impetus to send her to school. It would have been cool if there was maybe a scene where he was talking to Geordi. Maybe this is a little on the nose, but whatever. Talking to Geordi and saying about the school situation and explaining the badness. Oh no, because he goes to Beverly for that. But maybe then after that scene where Geordi suggests going to 10 forward, I feel like that maybe is a cut scene where he says, I was talking to blah, 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 and I'm trying to find a place where she could fit in. And Geordi goes, oh, take her to Guinan. Guinan would be perfect. Like, I feel like there's maybe a scene missing of that at some point, but that's just me being television nitpicky a little bit.
Yeah.
And I always want more Geordi.
No, fair enough.
I always want more. He's a great alien. I like Laverne. He's a great alien.
Laverne, yeah. It's a great alien. But yeah, so the scene when Admiral Halftail comes into 10 forward and he's just like a dick. I don't know. I'm not saying it's a bad scene. I'm just saying that it kind of annoys me watching it just because he's such a dick.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense for his character because he is definitely there to, as Picard said, to justify his decisions. So it feels like he's being opportunistic, but he doesn't actually care about Lal being in 1040. He's just using it as an excuse. Oh, this is what you're doing. You definitely don't deserve to be here. You're definitely treating her like shit. You have her waiting tables. What the fuck?
Awesome point. I think it's very similar to, what's her name? Is it not wrong character, but Martok's wife when she comes and wants to find problems with Jadzia and things that wouldn't really bother, like a party. Klingons love parties. Like she's like you're just upset because you weren't invited. Yeah, but I think she came there wanting to find problems. Like it's a trait that exists in all creatures in some ways in this universe, and I think it's played again. I hear your point in the sense that it's probably the most mustache twirly he gets in that scene where he's just what he's so like this they're serving synthahol. There's not even alcohol. This isn't Quark's bar. People are getting real booze here. There's no Romulan ale served at this bar except for Picard's brandy under the is it his brandy? It's Saurian brandy? Whatever. Either way, but it's sort of a social gathering area, and Picard points that out, and then Guinan swifts over there and sasses the F out of him.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what really rubs me the wrong way about him is that he's shut down Guinan. I'm like, God damn it, you don't shut down Guinan like that. When she's like, Admiral, you've been in a bar or two in your time.
He doesn't even give a giggle. It's not. It's like she kind of gives a look like, oh, tough cookie, like that kind of vibe. But I think that is a perfect opportunity for her to socialize. But I think he's not. I'm here defending this dude. He's not thinking about it in a standpoint of wanting this android to socialize at all. He's like, she's not to this point. She shouldn't be. She should be doing complex not more than algebra, heuristic sub pattern zoobidadoos. She should be doing
technobabble.
Yeah, she should be doing technobabble right now, not like interacting with people. There'll be plenty of time for that later. She's missing opportunities to properly evolve. And again, to date back to the Deep Space Nine episode, it's almost like, what's his name? The guy that the Odo's doctor that shows up.
Maura Pole. Yeah.
Yep, who's basically like, yeah, what are you going to bring to this equation? And he's kind of giving a similar attitude here in that way. Like, what is this really going to do to help us win wars? How is this, or help me be famous, or help another ship where this android should go, because this is our property?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I wanted to jump to the ending scene that we touched on a little bit, but with the confrontation with Admiral and Data and Picard, because I want to read this. I think I did like a video once where I did my top 10 Picard speeches, and I put this is a
good Picard speech.
I put this as my number one. So I want to read this. It says, "There are times, sir, when men of good conscience cannot blindly follow orders. You acknowledge their sentience, but ignore their personal liberties and freedom. Order a man to turn his child over to the state, not while I'm his captain." Yeah. Like, that was such like fuck yes.
You know why it's so good? Because it's short and sweet, and it like hits so hard. It's not as long and involved as his closing summation in Measure of a Man or some other big Picard speeches that you can pull off. I mean, it's not as intense as "there are 4 lights." I mean, that's probably the best, or 3 lights. But either way, I do think it's probably up there as well. I was talking about in my little notes, just talking about them sort of wielding their things like saber swords, like my speech, your speech, back and forth speech. And Picard's like, "I am going to trump you with the magic card here. I'm going to give you Picard's speech volume, level 9. You can't handle it." But he fires back. I don't care. It gets to the point where it's all leading. And we talked about this scene earlier. This is contrasted with after the scene with Lal and Admiral Douchehead. Yeah. She goes to Troy and freaks out. And Troy, I feel. And Troy makes herself useful. And you do. I feel your emotion. I can actually feel it. And then she goes and shuts herself off I just wanted to talk about that, because this scene gets cut off at like the apex. It seems like Picard's going to do level 10 Picard speech, and it gets cut off in a really surprising way.
Well, yeah, I actually think that works though. I don't mind that it gets cut off.
Because me too. I think it works really cool.
In one perspective, I wanted to see like Picard go to bat. Like, let's get Measure the Man Part 2, where they have to do a trial and Picard has to like make his case to Starfleet. But I think it's actually better this way, that where it actually becomes unnecessary. And of course it hits to the episodic nature. We gotta get rid of Law so the show can continue without her.
So we can do our hard reset. Because in fairness to all of that, the way television, especially Deep Space Nine and Next Generation, were shown, it was very hard to do multi-part story arcs. Half of the reason Deep Space Nine, and I'm a Deep Space Nine splainer here, but half the reason why it lost its ratings at certain times was being shifted, episodes being missed, and people losing story arc stuff. Next Generation was smart to do it this way, and Voyager had a little bit different of a path, because it was the show for a second UPN, like pushing it, and it sort of lived in one place and was sort of their flagship show. And Enterprise, got screwed, but that's more because of
Well, see,
whatever. We don't have to talk about Enterprise.
Yeah, I would argue with Voyager that they were more episodic than TNG.
Oh, definitely.
And it is what tanked the show.
Right. Voyager. We've talked about this. I remember saying this before, and I'll say it again. Voyager had a lot of opportunities to have a lot of television balls, and dropped it in a lot of occasions. They should have done Year of Hell as a whole season. That would have been incredible. The fact that they didn't still
Yeah.
surprises me to this day. That would have been one of the greatest. Like, I'm sorry.
Or at least like an 8-parter.
Right, at least something. Yes,
Yeah.
at least something like Deep Space Nine did with like, you know, the end of the series or something, with like a 7-parter, or with the station being taken over, with that whole stretch, you know, with Sacrifice for an Angel, like the you know, the story, the 5 into 6, like something like that. And but I agree with you. I think Voyager became too episodic, and they had more of an opportunity to do something a little different because of being able to be found the same time over and over again. But Voyager, as I've said many times, has great episodes, but overall sometimes can be a disappointment when you look at it as a whole, because of not wasted opportunities that they could have done.
Absolutely. And Voyager, I think, had the most mediocre episodes I think it had the lowest batting average for good episodes per season.
Yeah, especially if you factor in the end, how few episodes of Enterprise there are, and how good the last couple of seasons of it can be. Minus the final episode.
Yeah.
Number two, Strike. Is that the one, right? Is that the one Frakes directed on Enterprise? I hope not.
No. He didn't direct that one.
Good.
I can't remember which one it was.
Allison says her favorite Picard speech of all time is "A live omission is still alive."
What episode is that from? I can't remember that.
Let me see. I remember the speech. I was going to ask you the same thing.
Omission. Yeah, she'll get back to us.
Yeah, that's a good trivia thing though. Like it, but let me paste that.
His drumhead speech is really good too.
His speech to Riker in the episode that's connected to the Pegasus is pretty damn good.
Oh too. Yeah, the Pegasus. Oh, I was gonna bring up Admiral John Locke. Who was
Admiral John Locke is, but I mean,
he was very good. But he was a very evil admiral.
Right, he was a dickbag too in a sense. But so was Admiral Sisko's dad was pretty good at being an admiral. He ended up being duplicitous too.
Yeah. All right. So what was it? Yeah.
The Red Squad episode. The one where Wesley gets into the shuttle.
The First Duty.
First Duty. Not is it the Red Squad or whatever? Maybe.
No, Red Squad's Deep
Space. Sorry, I'm sorry. My head goes to Deep Space Nine. But yes, the episode where
Nova Squadron. That's what it was.
With Tom Paris, Tom Paris.
Yeah, not Tom Paris.
Not Tom Paris guy. That some people claim will go to their dying breath saying is Tom Paris.
You saw the Lower Decks episode with him, right?
I haven't caught up with that.
I won't spoil it, but yeah. No,
Valiant was Red Squad. Thank you, Brett.
Yeah,
and that was with Nog.
Yeah. So anyway, I really love this scene. Just even though he got cut off, is that the whole part of Picard, it's standing up for Data like this, and it's sort of harking back to Measure of Man again, and he flat out risks his whole career. The Admiral's like, "You're risking your whole career," and Picard's like, "So be it."
He's like, "Shit." He's like, "Shit."
I think it's one of the best Picard moments in the series.
It really is, and it's so much more justified than when he does that in every one of the Next Generation movies. It's like he finds a reason to do that in each one of them, because I think what is so, and again, I'm not using this I'm mainly thinking about Insurrection right now. But I think what really makes sense in this moment, what doesn't with Insurrection stuff. But that's a different podcast altogether. But yeah, I think it really hits home. And I think the fact that they do cut it off in that moment is part of what makes the emotional payoff that much better. And I also think they get the call, and they have to, there's a problem, and Data immediately can see that it's a cascade failure, that she felt emotions and stuff, and goes and needs to do immediate surgery in that moment. And another opportunity, and I know it's important that the Admiral steps up, but Geordi would have been good to help out in the scene.
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
That's where they should have had Geordi. I think it was I guess there's the whole too many cooks in the kitchen sort of thing. That maybe
yeah, yes, but he could have just come out with the admiral, like and just data, like just come out and put the
because
hat.
nobody knows more about androids than Geordi, because he constantly every time something's wrong with Data or something, Geordi's the one who looks them over. And goes over.
Absolutely. At this point, Wesley to a lesser extent, but yeah, ultimately it again, nothing that would take points off this episode, but Geordi again underutilized. And I think LeVar was underutilized in this episode, especially with the setup, where I think he could have been beneficial, as every time Data was in a scene uploading his consciousness to her, he could have been there too, or at least one of those scenes. And but whatever. It's, again, as I said, that's more me being selfish, because I would have wanted more, maybe have him in 10 forward to interact with all of that going on, or he's on the date and,
sure.
and she runs over. I don't know. So I'm making stuff up.
Yeah.
Oh no, I totally said, Brandon, I totally said Red Squad. Thank you for calling me. Calling me on that. The Valiant episodes.
So getting into the question you asked me earlier about Admiral Halftail, about his turnaround here, to me, and comparing it to Maddox and Measure of Man, to me, the Measure of Man Maddox, I think, was completely unearned. That's one of the things I hold against that episode, when he goes, he's magnificent. And it's like, just because he beat you in the court case, now you like him all of a sudden.
Right. It's like Picard speech Riker, and or like lawyer trick. Riker had the lawyer trick with shutting off the android, and then Picard actually put it home. And because of that, Maddox has the magic. Now I'm your best friend, and we're gonna write letters back and forth. But I do think it's interesting that something that does connect from that episode to this episode is the way that I process frustration and anger about people that are mean to Data, whether it be that dickhead first officer when Data takes over the
situation. That guy was a bigot over.
He was a Pulaski too, or
he was much worse. He was like Pulaski.
I don't like you. I will not. Wasn't it one of the dudes from Wings or something? But I could be making that.
No, I don't think so. No.
I forget the actor that was doing it.
I saw he was in one of those Chris Farley movies, Black Sheep.
Oh yeah, he played sort of the dick in that security. That's what I know him from.
He always plays the dickhead. Yeah,
he's one of those guys that plays it well. But yeah, it's
he's like, I don't think I'd be a good first officer for you.
And I think this guy, out of all the people that comes up and sort of shows Data more disrespect, this guy does it in an interesting way, and I think why it's more believable and more forgiving at the end for me is that he does it in a way that he doesn't disrespect Data for being less than.
Yes.
It's more he brings ego to every interaction with Data, and Data has none, and then Data's personality frustrates the shit out of him, and that Data's so sort of it doesn't sort of whatever, and I think that's part of what wins him over in the end. Can I assist? Data doesn't hesitate. Yes, you're the next to Geordi. You and Geordi are the two most qualified people on board to help me with cybernetics or whatever. This kind of situation. So it makes sense for you to help me in this moment. There's no ego. There's no, blah, 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 whatever. And I do think that plays on. Do you like that we don't see it? Do you like that they do the Battle of Blackwater? No, when the battle that Tyrion passes out.
Oh, yeah, I can't remember.
Do you like that they do it off screen?
I do. I don't think we actually needed to see that, and I think it's actually really powerful that it does. That would just cut to Admiral Halftail coming out. But I will say that
Me too.
I think that his willingness to help is not so much a turnaround, especially not compared to Maddox, because he did always want what was best for Lal throughout the episode. It's just in this moment, his interests and Data's interests aligned, where before they were separate. And
Right.
so once they aligned, he was totally. So that's why, like, some people I heard say, "Oh, this is a unrealistic turnaround for him," but I disagree with that. I think this was actually a natural progression that works for his character. I mean, sure, he was definitely being a dick before, but that's because his interests were different than Data's.
Right, but he cares and he wants this android to work. He's amazed. He really is. When he says it in a dickbag way, like, I have a lot of respect for your father, what he's did. He means that, but he
Yeah.
still thinks that what's best for the android is to do X, Y, and Z. He doesn't get, and I think it's a credit to the actor. I said his name earlier, how well he plays this, because I agree with you, Mark. I'm glad they didn't show it, because the emotional change when he walks out of that room, it feels so earned. The way the actor's performance, I think part of it's the actor's performance of it too, where Maddox, it's like an off switch. Now I love you. This guy in this moment very much plays it in this, oh my God. Like, he's never seen Data at work. And he felt as a parent, it connected to something that got brought up earlier, where in passing, where Data is he, and it gets brought up a couple times by Data to him. You're a father. You're a father.
Yeah.
In that moment, he sees not just Data doing sciencey stuff he saw the emotion. He's not the emotion. The the emotion. Yeah, the whatever.
Yeah. In his own android way. Yeah.
Yeah, he saw how much Data was what was best for Lal, and he sort of got hubris in that moment. And I think if Data had somehow figured that out, he would have had the same outcome. And I think that's an interesting point to ask after that. If Lal had survived, would he have been like, I'm dropping this? Yeah, the kid stays with Data. I think so. I think.
Oh yeah. Oh, I don't know. I think that's debatable. I think he might have went back to being an asshole.
But he was like, see what happens. See,
Yeah.
if we were in my lab. If we were in my lab.
I don't
So,
know.
yeah,
I can see it going either way. Yeah.
if we were in my lab, this never would have happened.
But yeah, but this is the one Geordi moment I really like, is when the Admiral comes out in the hallway and talks to Geordi and Troy, and they visibly start crying, and that's what makes this. And this is before we get the really emotional actual death scene, but it's what really primes you up for for the actual scene, which I believe you quoted earlier with the Law saying goodbye, and just the way Data matter of factly says, you have to go now, Law, because it's an amazing scene, because Brent's not like playing in the emotions. He's playing Data as emotionless android, but there's a subtext there that you can tell, even though that Data doesn't feel emotions, that he is still like sad in this moment in his own like android way.
Oh yeah, totally.
And just the way that Law says, and when she says, I love you, Father, like that's when the tears start flowing. And then
I wish I could feel it.
And then her response is, I will feel for the both of us. That's what really hits.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh my God, it's Waterworks City in that moment. And to answer your question from earlier, just on this scene alone, yes, her performance is amazing, because she hits this moment out of the ballpark. He does too, where he's also the reason why you feel it, or I feel it, I can only speak for me, is Brent plays that empty palette so well. I mean, and when you know Brent Spiner and you see him in other things, he's much more like lore. He's much, he's much more like Data in the Masks episode. That's more like Brent Spiner in real life. But so there's a lot of like internal energy going on, but like I think it's a lot of the emotion that I'm projecting onto him, and being like, he should be feeling this, and so I'm feeling it. And that's what all those Data moments, that's why I get so emotional in those moments. I mentioned this episode earlier, and it's more done in a comedic sense, but it also harkens back to this sense too at the end of Data's day. Is that the one where he has a girlfriend? No, the one where he has a girlfriend. Where I will in theory, yeah, I will eliminate the appropriate programs, or whatever the line is. And it's just this moment where you're just like, but you can see there's a little sass on his face. You're like, I feel you're giving some to her. Are you really going to do that, Data, or are you just throwing some shade back
Well,
at her?
so I did trash that episode. I wasn't happy with
It's not a great episode, but I think that's a
no,
great
but
moment.
I like that ending.
Yeah.
That and after that moment was when Spot came up and jumped on his lap, and he was like, "Hello, Spot." So he's kind of showing affection to Spot, kind of proving her wrong that he's incapable of showing affection.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a nice little touch to that.
Norman says, in theory, is awful. That's not Data.
Yeah.
I think in some parts it's not, but I think that end part, as he's deleting the program and stuff like that,
Yeah.
I enjoyed that moment. I think it harkens back a little bit to this, where he doesn't do that here. He remembers her. He keeps her as constant.
Now this gets into something else I wanted to talk about. Is I've heard different opinions that Data is just an emotionless robot, and people who watch the show project their own emotions onto him, and I disagree with that very heavily. I think some writers do write him that way, but I think he's always at his best when he shows like humanity in his own android way.
I think those are some of the best Data episodes, and I think they give him the most to play with on that way. And I do think this is still at the point, even though he gets him on the ground running, I think he's still developing some of those subtlety moments of Data. But I think in episodes like when he's dreaming, that's the birthright. Is that Birthright?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, Birthright. It's the first part of that weird back to back with the Worf looking for Mo. The first part's so good, and the second part's like, and that's the Julian episode as well. But I think all those moments, brothers. I think all of those meeting his father, having those connections. I think all those are just a different way of defining emotions. I always feel like Data doesn't realize he has emotions, but he does in a sense. I mean, and it's more like the chip unlocks his ability to actually sense them. And I guess that's one of the questions I have for the differences between him and Lore. Lore is emotions are already built into him. That's why the emotion chip kind of makes him even crazier when he adds to it. Does Lore actually have emotions built in?
Yes. So what happened is they built Lore first, but they gave him emotions, and they found that it turned twisted and ambition. So when he shut Lore down and then created Data, and that's why he took emotions away, because he couldn't master how to do it right without them making them turn evil. So apparently when he sees soon later on, he says it's the motion chip. That's after he'd been working on it for years.
Sometime between the crystalline entity and Brothers, he was able to perfect it in a way to sort of probably keep the moralistic, not have that person want to take over the world and turn into
get a giant snowflake to kill everyone.
Get a giant snowflake to try to kill all your friends. That's frowned upon in the Android world. Laura would have been very proud of the Picard season 1 stuff with he would have turned that planet into his personal army.
Yeah.
Been the dictator of that organization.
And I think all of the movies just did Data's emotion chip poorly because they didn't know how to handle it. It was clear the writers, and Brent even said he wasn't sure how to do Data with emotions. He was very much against him getting the emotion chip. And I think, Generations, they just played it for laughs, having him go,
I guess it works. So stupid. Generations is maybe the worst. Insurrection's kind of bad too at times, if I remember. But I guess First Contact is the best because it actually plays into the plot with the Borg Queen sort of tapping.
Well, see, so First Contact, they change it so he can turn off the
emotion. Yeah, and from that point on, he can turn it on and off.
Right? And then in Insurrection, it got removed or something.
And then not use it.
And then in Nemesis it's just gone all of a sudden again, no explanation.
Right, but it doesn't matter anyways because
But Picard season 3, they actually they did Data correctly with
No,
the
they did. They did.
Data that I wanted to see.
Yeah, and I mean, but with that, it's like two strike. They were down to their last swing, and they did it.
Yeah.
They tried to bring him back. That season one.
Yeah.
But in Picard, I like how he makes reference to that too when he first sees him. The last time I saw you, you wanted to die, and he says, "Well, this script's much better."
Yeah.
Spider-Man says, "Well, this script's much better, so I'll stick around for now."
Yeah, I don't know if you see. I've seen these memes online of Data at the end of Picard season 1 dying, and he always says like something like, "Picard, come closer, I have something to say," and he says like "These nuts" or something, and then dies.
I thought he worked good at some parts of that season, but I thought I wish they had saved him just for season 3. That would have been great if
me
that was
too.
that was the first time we saw him.
That would have been better. So I tried, like, and some people complained when they brought Data back for season 3. It's like, oh, we always saw this character die for good, so he's never going to die for good. I'm like, well, I just pretend that season 1 stuff.
Yeah, a wizard did it. A wizard, I don't care. Yeah. I don't care. You're not having him on there. It's like they finally have a good. More like Stewart finally agreed to let them do it. He's like, okay, fine. The rest of them can come. And I won't be a part of the making of this season. I'll just act. Okay. I understand. No one liked season 2. I get it.
Yeah. But anyway, so the scene at the end when Data comes on board or to the bridge, and the whole crew is there sort of looking at him. And it's like, again, it gets to the emotions of the episode and how everyone's just like near tears, and Picard says, we all grieve for your loss, Data. And he's like, it's okay. I have transferred her memories to me. Now, I've heard some people think that's creepy, that he just took all her memories and put it in him. But I think it's meant to be sentimental. It's meant to be lovely. And that's how I take it.
I mean, is it creepy that when Vulcans mind meld before people die? I mean, it's sort
maybe
of.
Some people think
maybe because I have melded with your father. Do you want to meld with me, Spock?
But I will say, I just watched Star Trek 6 the other day. And
that
scene where
Kim Cattrall, not
where
Saavik.
he like rips the thought. A lot of people have a problem with that scene.
Yep. I mean, it's probably. It's a well-acted scene by both actors. Kim Cattrall is an amazing actress, and Leonard Nimoy is really, really good in Star Trek 6. And he's really good in all of them, but he really plays anger with her. Like he gets it's the most angry.
Like when he slaps that phaser out of her hand.
And you know what? As much as I don't hate every moment of Zachary Quinto playing Spock, he's angry Spock. His anger is never justified on screen, and I think the only reason I don't is because I'm a Heroes fan, so I like seeing Siler Spock. But I much prefer the other two performances of Spock. It's not even a question.
Totally.
It's definitely third on the pecking order of Spock.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
But this is such justified anger in Star Trek 6 with Spock in that moment, because he's real, and they really do establish how he's put himself on the line for her in that moment. But to swing it back to this episode, I don't think it's creepy that Data does this. This is just, he did this from the beginning. Didn't he take all the memories from the people that got killed by the crystalline entity? No,
he has all of their memories.
Yeah, this is like
normal. Not all of their memories, but some of them.
This is normal android activity. It's like saying goodbye to somebody, it's just part of it's their way of remembering you, and it's kind of Borgy. It's a little Borgy, like I will take your existence.
Well, I mean, but she was dying anyway, so it's more like kind of like Inner Lighty, where the person's about to die, so they get remembered.
So you make that a part of you, or again like Odo, but Odo didn't do it intentionally. It was the other way around.
The other changeling.
I just thought about that, so it is a little different. The changeling made that choice to give that to Odo. But it's a huge, strong end to this episode. I think and that's the only reason I brought up, because I don't think it was, someone said it earlier that talking about that episode of in theory is awful. I agree, it's not one of my favorite episodes, but I do think episodes that end on Data moments like this are some of my favorite ends to Star Trek: The Next Generation episodes. When we're supposed to, when we feel this emotion, and you see Data's head just processing it, and it's just,
Oh,
it's
one of my
so
favorite
awesome.
ones. One of my favorite ones, even though I don't think it's a great episode, it's an okay episode, but the ending with Data is great. Is the most toys
Oh yeah, with
with Kivas Faja, the collector. Yeah, and
Daphne's fiance from Frasier.
oh really? I didn't. I've seen him in a whole bunch of other
I
things.
believe that. I believe that's the guy that, spoiler alert for Frasier, that Niles steals Daphne from, like the person whose wedding I'm blanking on what his character's name was on. But he's the lawyer that helps Niles out in the divorce. And just to add to our Star Trek and Frasier crossover appeal.
Yeah,
I would have loved to see
that part of it.
What's the Kelsey Grammer episode of Next Generation where the ship shows up?
Cause and effect.
I think a lot of people wouldn't have minded a mini arc of seeing what happened to that ship.
Yeah, but yeah. So anyway, in the most toys, they had the scene where the dude's in Kivas Faja's in the brig, and he's all pissed off, and he's like, his whole thing earlier in the episode is you can't feel the anger, otherwise you would kill me or whatever. And then when he's in the brig, he's like, this must give you great pleasure, and he says, I do not feel pleasure. I'm
Data shames him. Data shame Cersei, shame, like rings the bell up, or like I'm not feeling emotion torturing you. I'm not. You're liking this, like.
But that was just like a badass. This is such a badass way to say, haha, fuck you.
And that's the thing about, I think, well, we'll talk about Next Generation. I'll talk about Next Generation. That's the thing about when you have great characters. Even when episodes aren't necessarily the top of the line, you still get good performances or good moments, and almost every, except for that episode towards the end where a couple of Beverly episodes got pretty.
God, not the space car.
Yeah, you know the one I'm talking about. Maybe that one. There's always at least a couple of character moments that really kind of get you through the episode and make you. I don't know. They do a great job establishing these characters, and I think the series does that excellent. And it's one of those things I miss about these long seasons, because I don't mind episodes that aren't necessarily my favorite. Sometimes you get fun moments in those episodes. 10 episodes are great. 26 episodes was probably too much. Let's split the difference. Gets 20 episodes, or 15.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It depends if they can do it, right? I think Strange New Worlds would have been able to do it. Ironically, they did the shorter season, the 10 episodes first, when they probably could have handled 15, 20.
Because they balanced that episode of the week with ongoing storyline better than anyone since Deep Space Nine.
Whereas Discovery, 13 episodes was too much for Discovery, because they relied too much on the ongoing
2 episodes was too much of Discovery. No, I don't want to trash Discovery too much, because there are people that like Into Darkness. It was one of, and I think
I'm one of them. I like Into Darkness.
But do you like Discovery? So my point probably doesn't. I was gonna say Discovery.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm
people that like Into Darkness. And I don't think it's a bad thing.
I'm so on Discovery, especially the first couple seasons. But I think the last season and this season that's airing are the best. I think it got sort of better as it went. The first season, I think, had a lot of issues, and there was only a few good things about it. The second season had Pike, so that was good.
The second season was Pike. It was really good.
Yeah, the second season had really good moments and really shitty moments. And the third season had some good moments, but it botched its ongoing storyline.
Was the third? Which one was the Red Angel season? Was that second?
That was second, yeah.
I think that was the last season I watched.
Yeah. And the third season they went to the 32nd century. So from then on out.
Okay, no, I watched some of season. I watched season 3 as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Discovery has its moments. I think maybe it hooked in by the end. I think when I'm such an asshole. When it feels like Star Trek, I think it does it really well. When it feels like explosions, I don't necessarily love it. And I don't hate Into Darkness either. I think when Into Darkness tries to be its own film, it works. When it calls back too much to Wrath of Khan, I think it doesn't work.
Well, here's the thing about Into Darkness. I don't love it because here's the thing. I really don't like the reboots at all. Like I hated that first movie, which I know most people love it, but
I like the third one enough.
The third one's definitely my favorite for sure.
The third one's like a good extended episode of the original series.
Well, it feels like Simon Pegg wrote that, and it seems like he knew how to write for Star Trek.
And it's the only one that Kirk isn't insufferable in.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the only one he feels like Kirk to me.
Yes, exactly.
And I think it's a fun enough. It's colorful picture. The only thing that I think it fails it from being a top end Star Trek movie for me would be the villain. And I like Idris Elba. I think he's just betrayed by the makeup a little bit, and he can't really dig in. But I think the storyline, it's good enough. I like what's her name? What's the character's name?
Oh God.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. It's not but Jazz. No, that's Picard.
Celia, not Celia, that's Tasha Yar's daughter. Whatever. But that character, the additional characters, I think really works. And Into Darkness is a guilty pleasure movie for me. It came out on my birthday. I remember watching it on my birthday. I went to the theater. I had a good time watching it. I think I don't hate the first movie, but I'm not as big on it as some people are, because I think a lot of the love of that movie gets explained because people are like, oh, you got to read the comic. It sets up that Geordi built the ship that and Nero has so much more backstory. He was in a Klingon prison. Like, I feel like you have to do homework.
You never should have to do homework. That's why I hate J.J. Abrams. Most of his movies, they expect you to read a comic.
Right. Into Darkness, it is what it is. It's a popcorn action film with Star Trek stuff and can be fun sometimes. I like the Sulo sword fighting scene, jumping around. Like, it's just fun. Sometimes I like to shut my brain off and have some fun.
Well, the thing with Into Darkness is
Discovery isn't fun to me.
Fair enough. But the thing with Into Darkness, I enjoyed it because I wasn't taking them seriously because I hated the first film so much. And so I just sort of had fun with it. And also I saw it as, I wasn't judging it as its own movie. I was judging it as like a what if episode.
Right. Like a gigantic what if
parallel universe thing where something with Khan happened differently. So that's how I'm okay with
where Spock yells Khan like George and all those types of stuff. But beyond, if people got turned off because they didn't know, because some people are going to like it, some people, and I think what's awesome about Star Trek right now is there's enough kinds of Star Trek that fill whatever your need and your want is. Some people are going to like Discovery, some people are going to like Into Darkness, some people are going to like the first Star Trek, some people are going to like the first season of Enterprise, but
no one should like Star Trek 5.
Right. No one should like that. And no one should call marshmallows marshmallows for being silly. And again, that's stuff you need to read something else to get it, because apparently that's something you hear in the novel and like the written novel,
really? Yeah.
where that was a trick that McCoy played. He set the computers in the novelization is the word I was searching for.
Yeah.
He set the computers knowing that Spock would look into customs at campouts.
Yeah.
So he did it as a trick with a private joke between him and Jim. And that's the backstory of the marshmallows thing. That was
I thought he was just pronouncing it weird.
No, it was a joke that was cut from the script or something, or they didn't fix because, again, I think Shatner probably could have directed an okay Star Trek movie if it was the right movie. Even George Takei, who looks for any opportunity to trash Shatner, says Shatner did a pretty good job working with the actors.
So what I heard, what went wrong with the movie is they rushed it. They didn't have, because of the strike, they didn't have enough time to work on the script, and they rushed the studio, forced them to go ahead when clearly they did not have the script.
The script sucked. They should have ranged with the whole premise kind of sucked too. I think there was more of an interesting thing that you could have explored with the neutral zone thing and those three dignitaries.
The premise of having like a religious zealot could have been done right, but that's not how you do it.
No. Do you think any of it had to do with casting? Do you think if they had been able to cast Sean Connery in that role, it would have made any difference?
Well, of course, Sean Connery would make anything better.
He was who they wanted, who very smartly chose to do Indiana Jones 3.
Oh yeah, very smart. But But no, I don't think it has to do with casting. I think the guy who played Sabak, he's no Sean Connery, but he was really good. I think he was good in that role.
He's the father of who like
Oh God, yeah, I just heard this. I can't
the
remember.
something brothers. Is the Wachowski brothers?
Oh, the Wachowskis, yeah.
Is it like so?
No,
That's
no, he's her uncle. Not
his
the
uncle, not the father.
yeah,
Uncle, yeah.
yeah, that's right.
Cybok, and of course, Cybok gets brought back.
Oh yeah.
We finally get Cybok.
Well, I want to see
Spoiler alert.
more of him. They teased him, but
They
we
teased,
didn't.
I expected to see more because I caught
Yeah,
up late. I sort of started to catch up with that through watching a few like things about the show because I went back and I rewatched at all the Star Trek movies just to kind of get. I just went. I've recently too went on a Star Trek movie binge. I watched 5, and I'm like. And I messaged my cousin and I started talking about like, so where was Cybok with Burnham? Well, how's that fit into it? You know, we would start going back and forth. And I refer to Burnham as the Poochie of the Spock of Sabok's family.
All right, so the end of season 2 of Discovery, when they're like, let's just forget they ever existed. It reminded me of that Simpsons episode with Principal Skinner, where they showed he was someone else. And at the end of that episode, the judge is like, I decree that we never speak of this ever again.
I wish I could find it so I could give the person credit, but someone did a YouTube video years ago about it was like one of those days the Simpsons died type episode. Yeah. And they framed it from like, that was the moment. Like that, everything that happened after that was a decline in quality of the Simpsons. Yeah. There were still good episodes after that, but like that was sort of the end of the Simpsons era. Was this person's argument?
A lot of people had issues with that episode. I don't because it's just the Simpsons. Yeah, I don't take it seriously, but I think there were definitely. I heard that theory before that was the beginning of the decline, but personally, I think it was the next season. I think the rest of that season was fine.
Was pretty good, yeah. I mean, I think for me, it was this around the time where I sort of Futurama sort of took over for me in that sense. Was this when, like, I can't remember at what point in the Simpsons run Futurama started, but I started to become like obsessed with that show sort of quickly. And stopped. That was around the time I stopped watching as much of The Simpsons, and I think South Park started around that time too. So,
but the other thing I'd say about Discovery, if you stopped at season 3, then you stopped right before it got good. But to be fair, like 3, it should be good by 3 seasons.
That was my Enterprise problem too. I didn't watch the final couple of episodes of Enterprise till later. Like I was like after season 2, I think it was. I was like, I'm out.
Which is fair because if it's not good.
I'm like, I can't do this anymore. You're ruining my Scott. I'm such a Quantum Leap fan. I'm like, first of all, it's hard for me to take Sam seriously because, and this isn't a discredit to Bakula in the role. It's just when you know someone in a certain role, sometimes it's hard to completely see them as somebody else. And I was such a Quantum Leap fan. I'll always look at him as Sam Beckett. So I'm like, is he just leaped into the captain's chair right now?
But I didn't have that problem, and I think that what's his guy, Scott Bakula, that he didn't do a particularly good job.
No, and I think
particularly in the first 2 seasons, I
think he owns that in the Shatner-led Captain's documentary. I believe he even says that I already did my show. Everyone's on there proving it, and I already had my thing. So I maybe came in there with more of a punch clock kind of mentality where everyone else was sort of the captain of their crew kind of situation.
Yeah, I think that shows. But yeah, with Discovery, even though it gets better, and I think this final season might be the best, but it's not done yet. So
I will catch up eventually as I do with all stars.
Season 4 is really good, but it still has issues, so don't expect it to be amazing. But the things that still bother me about Discovery is the way it's shot, the cinematography there. And I think they get this from the Abrams films, is they're constantly spinning the camera around. Yep. It always has to be moving all the time. And I was like, God damn it, just keep the camera still. That's why Strange New Worlds is better, because they have that classic.
And I think that's one of the reasons I like season 3 of Picard over the first 2. I think the first 2 try to emulate a little bit more the shooting style of the Discovery style, where season 3 sort of backs it up a little bit and is filmed a little bit more like Strange New Worlds, in the sense of like the camera's panned out. It's not as much like kind of wacky cuts. They play with it a little bit in some of the Jack stuff, but I think for the most part, I enjoy the way Picard season 3 is filmed as well. And Strange New Worlds is and I know some people would say Lower Decks is, but I think Strange New Worlds is best Star Trek show on right now.
Oh, I agree. Lower Decks is, I think they're neck and neck.
Lower Decks is great. It's just there's a magic with they're hooked on to something with Strange New Worlds.
Well, the thing with Strange New Worlds is I didn't like the second season as much. I didn't think it was as good. It was still good, but it wasn't as good as the first season. I was not a fan of that music episode. I'm sorry.
Oh no, definitely not. Definitely not. But the Buffy musical and Scrubs episode, it was not.
No, I mean, I guess good on them for trying, but no.
So to answer your question, to go back to talking about this, would I put this in my top 25 of all Star Trek episodes? Or would I put it higher or lower than number 11 is where you have it?
Yes, yeah.
That is tough. That is tough. It's tough for me to think about it in the sense of all Star Trek episodes, because I think I would have it lower, but I would have it very high up there.
Still top 50, you think?
Yes, absolutely. It would be top 25 of. It would be top 50. It would be top 15, maybe top. I'd have to think about my top 10 of Next Generation, like really think about it. But if I'm doing like a straw list, it would be in the top 15 somewhere, maybe under 10, but it would be in like my top 15 episodes of Next Generation. Deep Space Nine swerves it for me because there's whole seasons of Deep Space Nine I like, and that's like 26 episodes, like seasons 5 and 6 of Deep Space, 4, 5, and 6 of Deep Space Nine. It's hard for me to think. Not that I think they're better episodes than this necessarily, but I'm being biased right now. If I'm really starting to think of like all the episodes and pile them up, I would probably. And I think when we've done this before, I'm Deep Space Nine heavy. But if we're talking Next Generation episodes, it's probably one of my favorite of these kind of episodes, of Data episodes. These emotional Data fighting for his sentience, his Johnny Five is alive thing, and I think this is the best of them.
Yeah.
And I think the guest actor is awesome. I think this is one of our best Admiral Dickbags.
Yeah. Well, and the Lal actor too.
Well, yeah, she kills, and I think they wrote really good for Troy, and Wesley wasn't too annoying. I think Whoopi was really well used in this episode. Down points of this episode are very few. No Worf, or Worf is cameo for some on the mic. He gets a call out from Troy, and we see him on the bridge at the end. And we see Riker in 2 scenes, and Geordi is barely in the episode too. But I would say, as an ensemble piece, up there, Mark. I would say you have it ranked pretty high, but not. Some of the episodes I was watching one of your reviews and talking about how you like it better than yesterday's Enterprise. And I don't know if that's changed since you've made that video before.
Well, yesterday's Enterprise was number 16 on my countdown, right? So I have this higher.
And I see what you have, and I think I might have yesterday's Enterprise higher, but I get your point about this being more universally appealing. Yesterday's Enterprise, I know who Tasha Yar is. Not everyone watching week to week would get the same feel of that. I know who Shooter McGavin is. Not everyone would get Shooter McGavin. I know what those uniforms are. I know I'm tickled seeing that Enterprise. Not everyone's going to get those same feelings. Most people watching this episode are going to cry at the end. Which this is a weekly. Some people not everyone that likes Star Trek is a Trekkie, and Next Generation had a lot of universal appeal as a television series, and this show. So I get what your point you were making about which show, there was a fight between Berman and Pillar about which episode to submit for an Emmy, and I think this was the one that ultimately won. I think that was a smarter move to submit it to non-Trekkies. I don't know if it ended up winning, but
I don't think it did.
Yesterday's Enterprise is number one for the entire franchise for me, says Norman.
Yeah.
Interesting that this was Jonathan Frakes' first take at directing, and this was the episode before The Offspring. Yeah, Mark was talking about that earlier, that this is just it's like a murderer's row of 3 amazing episodes.
Yes. Yeah, and Norman also says Offspring would definitely be my top 25. I just have to spend time to figure out.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Norman. With Norman's right there too.
Oh, that's fair enough. Fair enough.
It's definitely top 1 or 2 for Picard's speech.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's an episode I wish we got more
references to.
Yes, in later dates. We're picking up crumbs with the Picard season 3 one. I mentioned it earlier in a positive way. You mentioned it in a slightly more negative way. The truth is in the middle, where it was good that we had it, that a writer remembered the character, but we could have got more of that.
No, I agree. Yeah.
And if we do get Star Trek Legacy, and we do get some legacy characters coming back, and Data gets another arc somewhere, perhaps they would do it, because I never thought they would have a final conclusion to the Data lore arc, and we did get that at one point. So maybe they might bring the thought of that character back at some point in time.
If they do Legacy and bring back Data, the one thing I want to see them do is give Data a love interest that actually works.
Wouldn't Data, and I don't want to keep you too long, but wouldn't Data, the first thing that this Data is back now, wouldn't the first thing, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because season 1 Picard's not fresh in my mind, but once they tell Data, hey, there's a whole planet of androids, wouldn't Data's first thing be a pilgrimage to the planet?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Yeah,
that's probably the first thing he does after that point. So we might see, and then at that, if we ever get any more story on that, he could get something where we get him saying something like, I can feel Lel being proud that what me and her started at one point in time led to this somehow.
Well, and he needs to meet Soji. His daughter's still out.
His daughter needs to connect. They need to link up, whatever. They need to do the Android version of linking, or Vulcan Mind, hook their wires up, and Lel needs to meet Soji. Absolutely. But I'm saying, if we get Legacy, I wouldn't mind a pilgrimage with Data and Geordi traveling to that planet and getting further stories from that planet. If it's in the canon, we have to use it and make it better. I think whether people like things or not, the only way to deal with it in a positive way is to take things and make it good. Take lemons and make lemonade.
I mean, there are a few things that should be retconned, but other things you can keep. But
and they did, like with Data coming back and not dying in a depressing dream with bad makeup on. Like they were able to with a bad sort of de-aging thing going on. But I think, considering the last times that we saw Worf on all of the Next Generation movies or Nemesis, and seeing no sign of anything to do with Martok, I think, and seeing season 3 Worf House of Martok, how is the House of Martok actually getting some progress on that he's still part of the House of Martok, and that he was a diplomat at one point and abandoned it. Like, getting more furthering on the Worf story was something I know Michael Dorn had wanted to do for years, and going for that Worf story. And I'm glad that they were able to sort of give Frakes and him both like mini versions of the Titan storyline that Frakes wanted and Worf wanted with him. And so I'm, again, even though it's not perfect, I've been singing its praises. I think we could both probably come up with nitpicky things with season 3 of Picard. I do think it's still the best Next Generation movie we ever got.
Which one's P3 season 3?
Season 3 of Picard, I think, is the best Next Generation movie we ever got.
I'm actually a bit more mixed on. I didn't like the final 2 episodes, but that's just me.
Oh, when it's a little bit too member-berry when they get in the ship for you.
I just that too, but I just didn't think they should bring in the Borg. I'm like sick of the Borg.
Oh, dude, I am 100%, especially when you did them earlier in the series. Again, just like Data being brought, I'm with you on that 100%. I think the Changeling, the Dominion should have been the ultimate. Like, they led up to me where I was like, how is it not the Dominion? How is the, like, how are we not getting any Jem'Hadar at all in the storyline at all? Or I wouldn't have mind if you were going to do Borg, have the Changelings of morphed into it. It's the changelings using Borg technology somehow. Like I feel like it worked better when you shot your wad because you had a good villain in Christopher Plummer's Amanda Plummer.
Amanda Plummer, yeah.
And I think she did a great job in an awesome way eating up scenery. And and she should have been the end game. It should have all ended in the way that they finally defeat her somehow. I think they'd set up a good villain. She didn't need like in when Tywin Lannister and the Golden Child has the you will kidnap the baby. like she's like talking to the Borg Queen thing, and then the fact that the Borg Queen came back was a little Palpatine-ish. I'll with you. I was just member bearing the whole situation. I like the card game finish. I was all about the ship. The ship had me in member berry tears. I was a sucker because I've been I needed that. I just needed the influx of the emotional stuff, but it definitely started stronger than it finished. I'll give you that.
And and I am mixed on it because I think it had some amazing moments. Like
they did Beverly right finally.
Yes, but for me the best part was Ro. I never expected them to resolve that Ro storyline. The fact they finally did.
Have you heard all the conspiracy theory stuff that Ro didn't die?
Well, no, I didn't. But I heard the showrunner said it was their intention to bring her back to life in the final episode, but they just didn't. They didn't get around to it. Yeah.
Do you wish we got the Janeway cameo instead of Tuvok that we didn't?
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, it would have been nice, but I don't think it's necessary.
She did get mentioned a lot of times.
Yeah,
you can see Kate Mulgrew probably just couldn't figure out the timing of it because she's a busy person, but They definitely were leading, and I thought Tuvok, it was good to see him play. I thought he did a great job, and I think for me, it wasn't so much about the overall storyline. I thought for once in a setting since the series, it was the first time these felt like those characters, and I thought that to my overall point, like I think they did some good work with 7 of 9. I think surprisingly, she was very well done on the series and Worf, but I'm with you on some of the Borg thing. I was nonplussed by another Borg Queen, very Palpatine.
Oh yes, definitely.
Palpatine's returned. Oh, the Borg Queen's back. Like especially with the way, the way Voyager handled it. Essentially, it's hard to do the Borg after that again in this way,
Voyager kind of ruined the Borg.
They did. And also you did a Borg thing and you had 7 of 9 there, and you didn't do anything with it. I don't know. There was wasted opportunities as that. But again, I just want to even out some of my praise because I don't mean to be glorifying it too much. I think I'm with you in the sense of mixed if I think about it critically, but I got member buried with it.
Fair enough. I don't think I was as affected by some of the member berries. Some of them I were, but the Enterprise D, it was nice to see it, but I wasn't didn't make me teary-eyed.
I was more teary-eyed when I saw
fair enough.
The Defiant. I was like, wait, why doesn't Worf fly the Defiant while you fly the Enterprise D?
Well,
7 of 9 on Voyager.
This was, and it's not a major thing. It's just a minor nitpick. But my minor nitpick is they had the Enterprise D fly into the Borg thingy, kind of like an X-wing, and that doesn't make any sense because the Enterprise D is very bulky. So it didn't seem the right ship to do that. They should have gotten the Defiant.
It already has a cloaking device on it.
Yeah, and it would have made a lot more sense. It's just doesn't. It's
why take the Botany Bay's old ass cloaking system? Why not take the Defiance cloaking system?
Oh yeah, no,
that's a much more modern cloaking thing. They wouldn't have needed to get Geordi to come in there and do technobabble to fix it.
And a lot of people were pointing out that that's not really the Defiant, it's the Sao Paulo because the Defiant got destroyed.
Oh right, yeah.
But they changed the name of the Sao Paulo.
It was officially changed.
Yeah, so that's the Defiant.
Just like the what do you call it at the end of season 3 was officially changed to the Enterprise.
Oh, Norman's saying that the Sao Paulo didn't have a cloaking device, but I'm pretty sure it did.
I think. Did they cloak at any point after they got the Defiant?
Well, they barely showed it, so maybe we don't know. But
that's a good point, Norman, that I didn't think about. That. So the Reliant and the San Paulo didn't have. Were those the only 3 ships made for that fleet? Probably. I guess were there any other known Defiant class ships?
No, we definitely seen more Defiant class ships. Yeah, there was one that showed up on Voyager. There was like a couple in the Dominion War. Yeah. Oh, there was the Valiant. That was Defiant class, but that got destroyed.
Stupid Red Squad.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Phil, thank you so much for joining. It was so great to have you back.
My pleasure. Good to talk some
Great conversation. Yeah, so if you just want to give let people know where you can find you, what you're up to.
Well, if you want to find me, you can find me at Phil the Issues Guy. Right now, I'm sort of waiting on the next show, but I'll be doing a Sopranos cast on the 20th. But you can also find me jumping on Wednesday evenings, usually with Tony Teflon on Teflon TV, talking about From Right Now, leading up to the next season of that show. That has Harold Pirno, and it's a mystery box sort of show if people haven't watched it.
Well, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's called From. It's a horror-based. It's kind of. I'm not going to say the things that it's crossed because I feel like that's weird. But it stars Harold Pirno and a bunch of others. It's sort of mystery boxy for people that are into those kind of shows. Gives a Losty kind of vibe at times. The good part of Lost. So we'll see. It still has to end. But I usually jump on Tony's on Wednesday evenings to talk with him, and on when that show goes, the Escaping From podcast. So check that out.
All right. Oh, Brendan, you're saying 7 out of 10. Are you talking about the Offspring?
Are you talking about From, or are you talking about the episode?
Yeah.
Because you better be talking about From, or Mark's,
exactly.
Mark's going to take away that little wrench, I think.
No worries. All right. Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for joining, Phil, and thanks for everyone else in the chat.
Do you disclose what's next on your list, or you?
I do not. Okay. I withhold that, but I can tell you once we go off air.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I'll save that for next month.
Oh, Brent says Offspring. Norman says 10 for the Offspring.
Yeah. The Offspring. 7 out of 10 for the Offspring. Anyway. But anyway, yeah. So next month will be my top 10, getting into the Big 10. I can't wait for that.
Nice.
So anyway, yes, thanks for everyone for joining the chat. Allison, Norman, Brandon, and I think maybe a few others. Thank you so much for joining. Oh yes, by the way, my name is Mark. My channel is Enchantment of Eternity.
I'm not separating it. Don't separate the battle bridge.
I should get my toys unplugged. So you can check out my channel. I'm currently counting down my top 25 favorite episodes every month with the live stream, rotating special guests, and next month we're getting into my top 10. In the meantime, I'm covering Star Trek one episode at a time, currently in season 4, actually just wrapping up season 4 of Next Generation, going to start season 5. And,
what are your intentions with my daughter?
And finishing up my coverage of Discovery, and then I'll be covering House of Dragon in June. Can't wait for that.
So you're covering the final season of Discovery right now?
Yeah.
Cool. How many more episodes?
2 more.
Oh.
It's almost
done. Looking like it's good. Is it setting up? If it's, I don't spoil anything, but is it setting up for a big finale here?
Not necessarily, because you can tell it wasn't originally filmed to be the final season. But I heard that they did go back and do some refilms, so I'm expecting a big finish at the end.
I'm excited.
But yeah. So far, turning out really good. Anyway. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and we'll see you next time.